Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. President Trump today faced fierce criticism from his Republican allies, but not over his call with Ukraine. Instead, it was over his decision to pull U.S. troops out of Northern Syria. The president defended the move as fulfilling a campaign promise of bringing American service members home. But the decision has put the president at rare odds with some of his longtime allies. Both Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senator Lindsey Graham are calling on the president to reverse his decision. In a rebuke of the move, both men said they would have expected this out of President Obama, not President Trump. The criticism comes at a fragile moment for the president, who needs all the support he can get as he stares down an intensifying impeachment inquiry. On Monday, 3 congressional committees issued their latest round of subpoenas. They're now targeting both the Pentagon and the White House Office of Management and Budget. Democrats are demanding documents related to the president's decision to initially withhold aid from Ukraine, prior to his now infamous July phone call with the president of Ukraine. And there is now a second whistleblower who claims to have first-hand knowledge of that call. And we're also learning more about what led to that conversation. Secretary of Energy Rick Perry confirms he was the one who asked President Trump to make it. That admission comes after reports suggested President Trump was blaming Perry for the conversation. But Perry says he wanted the two leaders to discuss energy issues, not get dirt on Joe Biden and his son Hunter. In the meantime, the White House is expected to send House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a letter as early as today demanding a formal House vote on the impeachment inquiry. The White House is expected to make that demand before agreeing to provide documents requested by House Democrats. With more on the latest, we are joined by CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis, Politico White House reporter Nancy Cook, and Washington Post congressional reporter Mike DeBonis. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this busy Monday. Olivia, I want to begin with you. The Pentagon and the White House Office of Management and Budget are both being subpoenaed for documents over why the aid to Ukraine was delayed. Walk us through this and explain what lawmakers are hoping to learn.
Sure, Elaine. So this is the latest in a series of subpoenas and document requests that these committees have issued. We've already seen last week a subpoena go out, or the week before, a subpoena go out for Secretary Pompeo. Last Friday, the committee sent a document request, not a subpoena, but a document request from Vice President Mike Pence. And also late Friday, the White House itself was hit with a subpoena. So the OMB and Pentagon are the latest on this list. And all of these are for documents related, of course, to Ukraine, that July 25th phone conversation with President Zelensky, and President Trump's apparent decision to withhold military aid for a time for still unclear reasons. The committees are looking to flesh out a timeline here. They're looking to establish a fact pattern and to put some meat on the bones of some of this preliminary reporting we have about what exactly happened. So in the letter that accompanies their subpoena, they walk through some pretty pivotal dates. So September 2018 was when the funds were first appropriated for Ukraine. June 18th, 2019 was when the Pentagon first said it was finalizing those funds. And then there's this mysterious period of time between then and mid-July when the White House first put a hold on that aid. So they're going to want to know who first gave that command and why. What was the explanation given? What, if any, pushback was there? What was the White House saying was its rationale? All of those are areas of open inquiry that these committees are probing and looking to get answers to, first in documents and next, I would bet, in some rigorous witness testimony.
And to follow up here, Mike, what does this action by these committees indicate to you about the direction Democrats are taking in this inquiry?
Well, they're clearly trying to follow the roadmap that the whistleblower complaint laid out. They're going to try to run to ground all of the avenues that are contained in that complaint and have been indicated in some of the other evidence they've gathered, including these text messages that Kurt Volker, the special envoy to Ukraine, the former special envoy to Ukraine, turned over last week. The question Democrats are going to have to, confront at some point is how far do they want to go? How do they want to pursue all of these avenues that are being presented to them? At what point do they say we have enough to move forward with our impeachment proceeding?
Olivia, what more can you tell us about this second whistleblower?
So we just started hearing about that over the weekend, Elaine, and we only have an emerging profile so far. This is all information that the counsel for the whistleblower made public, namely that this person is also a member of the intelligence community and that this person has firsthand knowledge of some of the things that were outlined in that complaint. We know that a formal complaint hasn't yet been filed by this second whistleblower, but that those disclosures have already been made in likely the form of an interview with the intelligence community inspector general. So they're just as protected as a formal complaint would be. Also, intriguingly, we don't have a lot of detail about this, but the lead counsel for the whistleblower, Andrew Buckeye, also said that there were multiple whistleblowers who they were working with. So we not only know of a second one, but potentially more. We don't know how many more, and we don't know whether those potential whistleblowers also have to do with the Ukraine matter or something entirely separate.
All right, but at least 2 whistleblowers so far that we know of. In the meantime, Nancy, the White House is expected to tell House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to hold a formal vote on the impeachment inquiry. Explain the strategy here.
Well, the White House really is just trying to stonewall or sort of push this request out a bit. They've been very successful at stonewalling Democrats' investigations so far on a myriad of issues, and basically they're going to try to apply the same playbook to this. What they're going to say in their letter, or at least the rough details of it, are going to say that they want the House to hold a full impeachment vote. They want each House Democrat who votes for it on the record saying that they support this, and their hope is that they can then use that to target moderate House Democrats coming up for re-election in 2020 in places that Trump won in 2016, that they can use that to target those people and put pressure on them. And that's really the strategy. What's interesting to me is that that letter was meant to be sent on Friday. It wasn't. I was told by White House officials that it would be sent today. As far as I know, it has not been sent yet. So I'm wondering what is the holdup.
That's interesting. Mike, are you hearing anything on that? And how are Democrats reacting to this approach by the Trump administration?
I'm not aware that that letter has been received. You know, the Democrats in the House are expecting some degree of stonewalling and obstruction from the White House. Basically, their response to that has been to say that if the White House continues to stand in our way, we're going to use this as evidence for potentially another article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress, and basically they've threatened the president. If you don't cooperate with us, that in itself will be grounds for impeachment. But as Nancy said, this is, you know, right now a political process. You know, the White House wants to get these members of Congress on the record for impeachment. That's not something that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to do at this point. They believe that they have the law on their side. They don't need to take that vote at this point, and they have no plans to do so.
They don't feel they have to do that. And also politically, it could be perilous, right, Mike, for House members to actually go on the record and say that they support this inquiry.
Well, you know, at this point, there's only a very small handful of House Democrats are saying that they have not endorsed the investigation at this point. But there are a few, you know, a half dozen to a dozen who are still, you know, keeping their powder dry, so to speak, and not saying that the, you know, term impeachment inquiry is the best way to go about this investigative process.
So, Nancy, the White House has yet to establish a war room. Why is that, and is there a sense that there may be one in the works?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is the Republican National Committee and Trump campaign is really taking the lead so far in responding to the Democrats' impeachment inquiry. And it's not that they necessarily wanted to, but they're just picking up the slack. The White House hasn't been able to establish any sort of war room because the staff is very divided about who would lead it. Should it be lawyers? Should it be a political operative? Who would be a part of it? How it would be structured? And so, like so many instances that we've seen before, the White House staff is very divided on this issue. And Trump himself, I think, has sort of shrugged off the idea of an internal war room. He is getting some pressure from outside allies to set one up, but he really, I've been told, feels like he can just handle this by making public statements, by using his Twitter feed to speak directly to the American people. And I think that he is sort of functioning as a one-man war room at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw a moment ago when he was there at the White House in what was supposed to be this, focus on the trade agreement with the U.S. and Japan. Instead, take these questions and to use the opportunity to go after Democrats regarding the impeachment inquiry. So, Mike, let me turn to this. So far, only 3 Republican senators have raised concerns over the president's contacts with foreign leaders, and there does not seem to be a unified defense of the president in place. What are you hearing from GOP lawmakers about this?
Mostly silence. It's a topic that they're largely hoping to avoid. There's only a handful of members who are doing town hall type events, the Republican members who are doing town hall type events. Some of them are getting buttonholed by local media and are speaking out. Today we had Senator Rob Portman of Ohio made some comments to the Columbus Dispatch, being gently critical of the president's approach, critical of his remarks, asking China to investigate the Bidens. But people, with the exception of Mitt Romney, are not volunteering their opinions on this. They're not going out on a limb and saying that the president was wrong or otherwise expressing much of an opinion on it. The president obviously has his stalwart defenders. Lindsey Graham, Senator Ron Johnson emerged over the weekend as someone who's going to be very outspoken in defending him, even though he seems to be privy to facts that contradict that. But for most Republicans, they do not see an advantage of inserting themselves into the middle of this conversation right now.
Nancy, in an article published Monday, you write this, quote, "The tentacles of the Democratic impeachment investigation are extending far beyond the arms of President Donald Trump, and a president who loves to be in control is increasingly finding himself out of it." So clearly this inquiry is not going away anytime soon, certainly not before the 2020 election, or perhaps not. What does that mean for the president and his administration going forward?
Well, I think what is different about this investigation, the impeachment proceedings versus past investigations, is that it is spreading so far throughout the federal agencies. And so you have the Democrats looking into the State Department, the Budget Agency, the Department of Justice. But you also have one whistleblower complaint and potentially another. And it's just making it very difficult for the White House to stamp out or control in any way this investigation, because the Democrats have so many avenues to get information from and so many potential witnesses to interview. I think there is a political risk for Democrats, though, in that they lose focus of the investigation. It becomes too sprawling, and Trump is basically able to capitalize on potential confusion over it and disinformation. But right now, I think the Democrats are in a bit of an advantage just because there are so many places where they can get information, and it's really coming out in this pretty fast drip manner.
Olivia, Congress is still on recess, but there are 2 more depositions set for this week. Who is scheduled to make an appearance on the Hill this week, and what are lawmakers hoping to learn?
That's right. So we know that the committee expects to hear first from the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland. That's tomorrow, Tuesday. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he was an integral part of those series of text exchanges released last week with the Ukraine envoy, former Ukraine envoy Kurt Volker, and another top-ranking diplomat there, William Taylor. Those texts showed how Sondland played this major role in trying to exact a statement from the Ukrainians that they would make a public statement about opening an investigation into the 2016 election, and Burisma, this company on whose board President Joe Biden's son sat for a time. So the committees will want to know why the EU ambassador is having these conversations at all. For one thing, Ukraine is not in the EU.
Right.
But for what kinds of instructions was he being given by the White House, by Rudy Giuliani, by anyone else about what to promise in exchange for that statement? and anything else that sort of was going on at the time. So he's expected for a closed-door deposition tomorrow. Also expected in on Friday is the former ambassador to the Ukraine, Masha Yovanovitch. She was reportedly removed from her role at the behest of President Trump, who has said publicly that he had heard, quote, very, very bad things about her. The suggestion there being that she had been openly critical in some way of Mr. Trump while in her role. But it's important to note that Yovanovitch is a career professional who's otherwise really received widespread bipartisan praise for both her work and her character. So the committees, I think, are no doubt hoping to learn more about what she understood about her own situation, how she was told that she was coming home early and why, what other things she might have witnessed overall in the administration's approach to Ukraine. And so those are the two witnesses that are expected in just this week. But as Nancy just said, I'm sure that the drip will continue.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Olivia Gazis and Nancy Cook, thanks to you both. Mike DeBonis, please stay with us.